the best way to predict the future is to build it here in America. Every year, billions of people from LA to London to Lagos waste hours stuck in traffic. And that's why I founded Archer, to give people their time back. Meet Midnight, built around one of the world's most advanced electric powertrains. Midnight takes off vertically like a helicopter, then it tilts its propellers forward to fly on a wing like an airplane at up to 150 miles per hour. It's whisper quiet when flying overhead, all electric and designed to move 4 passengers across the world's most congested cities. With the US government making this a strategic priority and over $3 billion in funding to date, we're now gearing up for launch. We've opened our high-volume factory in Covington, Georgia. We're conducting test flights from California to Abu Dhabi, feeding real-world data into the final stages of our FAA certification program. And now, with President Trump's executive order, the White House has a mandate to ensure American dominance in flying taxis. And Archer plays global offense with a multi-billion-dollar order book and partnerships with many of the world's top airlines. In LA, Archer is the official air taxi of the 2028 Olympic Games. And Anduril selected Archer as its exclusive partner to bring vertical lift to the front lines with a hybrid electric version of Midnight for America and our allies. We're building the future. Watch the skies. We're just getting started.
Adam, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for coming to this session. I've covered eVTOLs, I think, since they were first starting off. You guys, Joby, and I ended up writing about Larry Page's many electric aircraft companies over the years. I know the video gave us a little taste, but why don't, for people who aren't following this stuff day in and day out, bring us up to speed on where Archer's at, maybe kind of what like the next year or so looks like.
Yeah, so the goal is really to build the future of aviation on both the civil and on the defense side. The project has been worked on for a very long time. The core team at Archer has been working on this since 2009, and it's the 9th generation aircraft that team has built. So lots of time to harden the tech, because it takes a long time to get aircraft to the point where they can be safe and then ultimately scaled and brought to the public. So the goal is to bring aircraft to Abu Dhabi this year, kind of commercialize. For us, that means we're selling our first aircrafts and get it all kicked off and going. And so the core concept was always, where am I flying cars? And the goal is to bring that dream to reality this year.
And so selling aircraft in Abu Dhabi this year, does selling mean, is that a distinction between people flying, or what is the fine line there?
So the UAE regulators have done a really good job leaning in, and they've leveraged a lot of the data that the FAA has really kind of built. And so we're deep in the process of certifying in the FAA, in the US with the FAA, but then also deep in the process with the UAE, which is going through their own type qualification process. And so the goal will be bring the aircraft there, start the launch, and then you'll start to see very conservative routes being flown, then ultimately adding people, and then ultimately kind of expanding those routes. So this is the kickoff and start that journey. And then we partner with Abu Dhabi Aviation, which is the kind of leading helicopter operator in the Middle East, which is owned by the Abu Dhabi government. And so they've done a good job of allowing us to create a plan, start the operations, just get the thing going. You just have to start. It's like day one for the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I've covered rockets and all sorts of aerospace, everything for years. Anytime you have a new vehicle, it's always going to be a long journey, especially through the certification process. There's just certain things you have to do that take a long time in this field, especially if you're going to have humans inside of them. So, just from an outsider, I got so excited about this technology early. It feels like it's taken a while, but I do understand part of this is necessary. I'm always curious, what have been the hardest challenges that maybe you guys didn't see coming?
I think it's all been hard. Everything has been hard. Building the aircrafts, raising the money, getting the regulatory frameworks in place. But I think they all had to happen together and at the same time. And it's a tricky, kind of, web to weave here. So lots of things happened that made this, we're very fortunate. And so what was obvious to, I think, bipartisan in the government side was America had to lead in aviation. And so as some of the legacy OEMs were having a difficult time, and it looked like a new generation of aircraft was going to get built, that had to be built in the US. It couldn't be built in China. And so that was the first time where, bipartisan, they said, we're going to create a new category within the FAA to go do this. And it was the first new category in 60 years. They called it powered lift. So that was a huge deal that they put to carve the path to do that. So without kind of the, I'll say friction from China, that might not have ever happened, because it's hard to get a regulator to change, do something different, to do something new. The second thing that happened was Tesla and SpaceX. The success in Tesla showed hardware can generate real value creation opportunity. And that opened up the capital markets, which allowed money to flow. And before that, I have a lot of hard tech founder friends that are like, it was impossible to raise money for hard tech. Why? Because, like you said, they take a long time. And as Palmer said in the session before, nobody wants to hear the uninspiring pitch that's going to take us 10 years, and nobody wants to hear that. And so Tesla really showed what was possible. And then, you had the money, you had the regulation, and then ultimately you had the engineering. So you had to wait for the lithium-ion cells to get good enough, energy dense, power dense, safe enough to enable us to do that. All those things had to come together at the same time in order to make this work. And if any one of those didn't come together at that time, we're cooked, it's game over. And so that's where the serendipity here really lies.
So the U.S. went to all this trouble. Do we, is it a success at the end of the day if the first flights happen in the Middle East, and China does have a ton of air taxi startups?
Well, if you think about it from the FAA's perspective, it is a very well-established organization that has a lot to lose. And so it's going to be more conservative naturally, the same way any developed, established company, country, regulator acts. It's like a very natural state. But what we're doing is sharing all the data from the UAE back to anything in the FAA. And so super transparent, open, policy, which should be viewed very positively from the FAA, because it's more data that they get. It's more opportunity for them to prove, that what we've done is works and is safe. And so if anything, I think it should be viewed very positively.
And I see you guys, I was reading through your materials last night, getting ready for this. There's a lot of talk about the Olympics. I know, I think you guys have been chosen as the official air taxi of the Olympics, is that right? So is that's the tea leaves I was reading, is that's the moment when the US thinks we might make the biggest splash with these vehicles?
In 2022, the FAA coined this term, they called Innovate 28. And they said, we want the LA 28 Olympics to be the moment where there's mass use of this product in one city. And the LA Olympics is the perfect way to do that. It's a perfect way to show America's leading in aviation, that America's dominance in the category, and that the regulators can innovate too in order to make this happen. That's why they put that date out there as kind of their own marketing campaign to say, we got to move as an agency to actually be innovative as well. And so a year ago, we started planning for this very seriously, where we announced our LA infrastructure, vertiport network. And so a lot of the key areas we picked were direct overlays to the Olympic venues. And then when the Olympic process came up, it was an extremely competitive process to try to win that. You had to win their trust that you're going to be able to execute, that you can deliver, because we are a big part of their transportation solution for dignitaries, VIPs, athletes, fans. When we ultimately won that, it was a way for everybody to rally around one date to say, okay, if we're going to have mass use in 28, this has to get certified before 28. We can't be going all the way up to that. So everybody is now behind that, and it's a good way for us to show back to President Trump's goals, made in America products, where we can help work through very difficult regulated industries and ultimately bring jobs and show that America leads in aviation.
Was it the LA Olympics, the last one? That's where the guy parachuted into the stadium, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think there was the famous one is the Jetpack Man. That one was that one was the one that everybody talked about.
Yeah,
we are
replicating this.
Yeah, we're set up to be a storyline for them, because if you think about the Olympics, it's TV, right? It's NBC. There's 19 days, 41 million viewers per day. It's like the best advertisement in the world for us. All the dignitaries, VIPs from all around the world come to see, and they're going to get a chance to ride on these aircraft and hopefully ask the question, well, why don't we have this back in our country?
Obviously, Palmer was just speaking. You guys announced this partnership, I think it was like 4 or 5 months ago. I think it's for the defense industry, so there's some limitations probably around what you can say, but so you're partnering with Anduril. We saw it in the video for a second, or talked about it, but what is that aircraft meant to look like, do, and maybe like how did this partnership come about?
You can see today in any of the conflicts that UAS, counter-UAS has become, one of the dominating factors. And a lot of that thinking has shown unmanned systems have actually become very important, and low-cost unmanned systems specifically. And so the systems you see out there today are the small ones, because the big ones take time to build. But once you start to look at these unmanned systems and you start to develop them, groups like Archer, Anduril realize very quickly that most of the cost is in these systems, most of the cost that's in there is based around protecting the humans. And so you build these machines that get very expensive, and because they're so expensive, you want to keep them for a long time, which makes it even more expensive. So the acquisition cost plus the operating cost is extremely high. So if you thought about it differently, you're like, okay, it's an attritable asset, like we can lose it. And so you want to make the cost as low as possible. And you can drive the cost down 90%. All of a sudden, you start to think like, why would I ever build a manned asset again? I can overwhelm the other side with these unmanned assets. And so the question is, can you do that? And so as the autonomous attritable strategies start to play out on the battlefield, it became very clear that this was going to be a key strategy for the future wars. And so when Anduril looked at it, if Anduril had enough time, they would just go and do it themselves. But the challenge is building big rotorcraft is it takes a long time. So as I said, like this is 9th generation of the core team that we've been working on, 9th generation aircraft. And so by partnering with Anduril, we could build the base aircraft, they could missionize it, and we can get a product to market really fast because there are customers and real needs for these types of platforms like now. And so there's just not time to go start over. And so we have an ability to build a product, deliver it, that I think is going to play a very important role. And one of the things that Parma always talks about is, you win the simulation, you prevent the war. It's not even win the war. You have to show you can win the simulations. And there are holes in our simulations today. And this solution that we're building helps solve one of those big holes.
And is there any information on how different it would be from your core platform when it would be out?
Yeah, so what we've said is that it's a hybrid VTOL product. Hybrid meaning we're going to put heavy fuels back in so the range can be much greater. And the goal is to make a variant of what we're already doing, because if you look at today's kind of big expensive assets, the challenge is they're so expensive, so you don't build a lot. And when you use them, you don't want them to get damaged or lost, so you don't really put them out in front, because if you do get them damaged, the cycle time to replace them is so high that you're in this like vicious cycle of keeping costs really high because you don't really make or use a lot of stuff. So when you looked at it from what we're doing, there's a big new civil business that's being born. And if you could share a lot of those parts into the defense product, all of a sudden you'd have a civil business that's scaled up, a defense business that can become lumpy, that can get scaled up or down at times, and you can shift products back and forth. And so that's a lot of the concept that we looked at. So it doesn't take you 18 months or 2 years lead time to replace a part, which it can in some of the big rotorcraft systems today. And so it enables you to build a huge business that can be very effective and allow you to switch back and forth, which will ultimately, sustain the business over time, create lots of jobs, and it's a, sort of a kind of solves many of the problems we see today.
And just annoying reporter follow-up. I mean, so is this craft you're building with Anduril, is this something pretty far out, or then given all that it's closer, maybe?
The stuff we're doing is definitely not that far out.
Okay.
So the goal is to get assets, in market, quick, and because there's a need. And so everything has to be thought of from that perspective. And so there's different trades that you make. There's always, and building any aircraft, it's the same trade: speed, range, payload. You're trying to understand like what the vehicle can do, and that's based on the missions that are out there. And so you look at the missions, you try to figure out what to build, but all of it is with the context that we already have a base layer platform that we're going to try to build off of to make this come to market very fast.
I think, unless I'm wrong, Boeing bought one of Larry Page's eVTOL electric aircraft startups. Is that
yeah.
fair? Are the traditional primes focused on this area? Are they building rival type aircraft?
I think everybody has like a different perspective. And so Boeing's version of this is a company called Whisk, and they've focused a lot on autonomy. And so the autonomy platform is really transferable to their core business too. So if you rebuild, let's say, avionics suites and new, flight control computers, things that can be used on the bigger aircraft, it can become, synergistic to do that. And now you have a platform to actually go build and test that stuff. So for them, it makes a lot of sense to go do that. I haven't seen a lot of real effort from any of the legacy companies, aggressively going after like the eVTOL market the way like we are. And so I don't expect to really see that. I think the constant innovator's dilemma challenge that they all face is the core business is struggling. Let's make sure we get that thing shored up before we go spend all this R&D money on a speculative project.
And like another annoying reporter question. I mean, it feels like it's been, you said 2009 is when you guys started?
Well, we started the company in 2018, but a lot of the core team has been working on this together since 2009.
Since 2009. So it's been this long journey to get to these first crafts. There's some differences between you and Joby. They're in the ballpark though of number of people that can fly. This is cost a lot of money to get here. There's some limitations around the craft. It's just, when do we get to take the next step? And is there a goal to build like a family of aircraft?
Yeah, so the goal is to get the aircrafts started like this year. That's the goal. Put the stuff in Abu Dhabi, start flying the planes, show everybody that this industry can start day one, right? It's like the Roadster came out, but it wasn't until really like the Model 3 where it was fully vertically integrated. It was like this pretty big scalable platform that was affordable to everybody, but you had to get started, right? And so that's been the whole push. Get everything started, stop designing, stop engineering. And so that's really what the big push is. There certainly will be, V2s of these, version 2s and, bigger versions, smaller versions, all of that. But I do think the defense side will probably end up being bigger in the first 10 years because there's such a growing need right now for that. I think the defense is going to get very big. You can just feel the energy of everybody looking at these, autonomous attritable solutions and like understanding that there's real conflicts. We don't want to put human lives at risk. We want the cost to come way down, and we need to be able to build again. And so that's really the goal. That's what's kind of great about this whole conference here, right? Is I think what's important to me, and I think what's probably important to a lot of the founders here is it's not just about making reindustrializing America. It's about making America unfuckwithable.
Yeah. On your website, you have this vision for what this might look like in New York. I mean, you talk about these commutes between Newark and Manhattan in like 9 minutes, I think, versus obviously like an hour in a car, if not more. Would anybody be able to go and do that?
Well, if the goal is to have the Olympics be that end date in scale in 28, then that means it has to get certified before that. So whether that's 26 or 27 or 28, whatever the time period is, I don't get to pick that, like the FAA picks that. So what we'll do is build the safe aircraft and get it there. That being said, you see a lot of momentum. So President Trump's executive order saying this is super important, FAA needs to focus on this. Secretary Duffy, Secretary of Transportation at the Paris Air Show, announcing the Five Eyes Agreement, trying to simplify regulation and operational rules across America and its top allies. And so there's building momentum. And so what I think is going to happen is the momentum builds into the Olympics. The stuff in the Gulf, really starts to build increased momentum. And I think those timelines will start to really collapse.
And you think I hadn't heard this before, but you think defense will stay bigger than that consumer civilian business for a long time?
If you're building autonomous attritable assets, there's no certification process. There's how many can you build? Can these things be deployed, and are they ready? And so it's a very different concept than, okay, not only is it built and certified on a federal level, but I have to also get the different municipalities involved. And so there's definitely just time to do that, time to scale all that. On the defense side, if you have the stuff that works that they want, you can instantly deploy it. So a lot of it is building the prototype, showcasing them of what they can do, getting the programs won, and then delivering assets. Because there's like viewpoints of we need to be ready for certain conflicts. Indo-PACOM, if you look at like the island chain, it's big, right? And we don't have a lot of good solutions today. And so when you start to look at these different problems, they're like, we need solutions like now. And so yes, there are programs that are like in the works being worked, but they need solutions now, not in 10 years. And so I think that'll be the difference here. And so I do think defense ends up being a very big part of the industry.
Okay. I see we're about to run out of time. Lightning quick question. Have you been in a Midnight? Have you flown in one?
We just started the piloted test campaigns, but the goal is to fly in them this year.
And when do you get to go on one of the first,
It will first be flown by all the test pilots,
Yeah.
and then I'll be the first passenger.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed. Thank you all for coming.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, man.